Our cook, a tall and gangly woman who nonetheless produced the most amazing soups and soufflés, thus putting the lie to the notion that one cannot trust a slender cook, was the one who showed me the secret of preserving sparklings after death. She kept one on her dresser top, which she brought out for me to see when I arrived in her kitchen, much cast down from the loss of the sparkling and from my mother's chastisement. "However did you keep it?" I asked her, wiping away my tears. "Mine fell all to pieces." "Vinegar," she said, and that one word set me upon the path that led to where I stand today. If found soon enough after death, a sparkling, as many of the readers of this volume no doubt know, may be preserved by embalming it in vinegar. I sailed forth into our gardens in determined search, a jar of vinegar crammed into one of my dress pockets, so the skirt hung all askew. The first one I found lost its right wing in the process of preservation, but before the week was out, I had an intact specimen, a sparkling 1.5 inches in length, his scales a deep emerald in colour. With the boundless ingenuity of a child, I named him Greenie, and he sits on a shelf in my study to this day, tiny wings outspread. Sparklings were not the only things I collected in those days. I was forever bringing home other insects and beetles, for back then we classified sparklings as an insect species that simply resembled dragons, which today we know to be untrue, and many other things besides. Interesting rocks, discarded bird feathers, fragments of eggshell, bones of all kinds. Mamma threw fits until I formed a pact with my maid that she would not breathe a word of my treasures, and I would give her an extra hour a week, during which she could sit down and rest her feet. Thereafter my collections hid in cigar boxes and the like, tucked safely into my closets, where my mother would not go. No doubt some of my inclinations came about because I was the sole daughter in a set of 6 children. Surrounded as I was by boys, and with our house rather isolated in the countryside of Tamshire, I quite believed that collecting odd things was what children did, regardless of sex. My mother's attempts to educate me otherwise left little mark, I fear. Some of my interest also came from my father, who, like any gentleman in those days, kept himself moderately informed of developments in all fields: law, theology, economics, natural history, and more. The remainder of it, I fancy, was inborn curiosity. I would sit in the kitchens, where I was permitted to be, if not encouraged, only because it meant I was not outside getting dirty and ruining my dresses, and ask the cook questions as she stripped a chicken carcass for the soup. "Why do chickens have wishbones?" I asked her one day. One of the kitchen maids answered me in the fatuous tones of an adult addressing a child. "To make wishes on," she said brightly, handing me one that had already been dried. "You take one side of it—" "I know what we do with them," I said impatiently, cutting her off without much tact. "That's not what chickens have them for, though, or surely the chicken would have wished not to end up in the pot for our supper." "Heavens, child, I don't know what they grow them for," the cook said, "but you find them in all kinds of birds. Chickens, turkeys, geese, pigeons, and the like." The notion that all birds should share this feature was intriguing, something I had never before considered. My curiosity soon drove me to an act which I blush to think upon today, not for the act itself, as I have done similar things many times since then, if in a more meticulous and scholarly fashion, but for the surreptitious and naive manner in which I carried it out. In my wanderings one day, I found a dove which had fallen dead under a hedgerow. I immediately remembered what the cook had said, that all birds had wishbones. She had not named doves in her list, but doves were birds, were they not? Perhaps I might learn what they were for, as I could not learn when I watched the footman carve up a goose at the dinner table.